Have you ever been so disappointed by video games? Like, have you ever been so excited by a reveal or a release of a brand new game that you've been dying to play, and then once that game is finally out in your hands, you play through it and later on feel empty or remorseful of your decision to buy the game? We all get let down sometimes, and it sucks when a video game doesn't live up to our standards. But whenever I get disappointed by a product, it often helps me feel better to trash talk these games and to let out all your frustration on them. Not all the games that I'll be talking about today are necessarily bad games. In fact, a lot of these games I'll be talking about are actually good games that critically did well or are beloved by so many people. So if I talk about a game that you might like, please don't take it personal, as it's just my own silly opinion, and remember that this is my personal list. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, and if you like these games, I'm happy. You can enjoy something that I might not, so with that disclaimer out of the way, welcome everybody. My name is Chavapa, and here are my personal top 10 disappointing games, and I'm sure number 1 is gonna piss off a lot of people. But before I start this list, here are some honorable mentions that I decided not to add to the list due to either not playing them or the fact that they did not disappoint me as much. Call of the Sea, which should have been a beautiful and emotional Xbox Series exclusive, ended up being botched by game-breaking bugs and glitches which took me out of the experience and made the entire game a chore. I should have been emotionally invested in the story and the game, but in the end it just made me feel glad that it was finally over so I can clear the 30 gigabytes it put on my Xbox hard drive space. Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. While the game has a good story and it has plenty of fun new Pokemon, it struggles with an uninteresting region and graphical disappointments, also known as reused models and ghost rocks. As well as the hard-to-ignore cut Pokédex, which drags down the adventure and replay value, and there's no denying that the game definitely needs more time in the oven. And that's not to mention the disappointing DLC that came after the release of the game. But I'll save that topic for another video. This game really deserves it. Cyberpunk 2077. Yep, I bet you all saw this one coming. This game was promised by CDPR to be one of, if not the greatest game of all time, but it ended up being bogged down by its short main campaign as well as the sea of game-breaking bugs and glitches that ruined the game experience, and that's not counting its unacceptable inability to play on current and next-gen consoles. Unless you're this dude. But unless you're this dude, you're not gonna have a very fun time with this game. I definitely think CDPR should be absolutely ashamed of the game they put out in stores. This is absolutely disgusting. And again, this deserves a video of its own in the future. Star Wars Battlefront 2. What should have been the ultimate Star Wars Battlefront experience ended up being barred down by horrible, disgusting microtransactions. No, wait, I'm sorry. I meant to say how EA wants me to say it. Surprise mechanics! Other than the surprise mechanics, the game itself is hollow and soulless, and it's just a cash grab that exists to steal your money. In the end, it didn't give anyone but electronic farts a sense of pride and accomplishment. And finally, Star Fox Zero. We waited over a decade for a new Star Fox game, and we ended up getting a game that felt rushed, lacking, and just overwhelmingly disappointing to the point where it's just depressing. And the forced motion controls and the use of the gamepad make it a lot less fun than it already is. Now I see why they call it Star Fox Zero, because it has zero content. Alright, so now that we got those honorable mentions out of the way, let's finally start a top 10 list, and believe me, it's gonna be a wild one. When you think of big video game developers, you probably think of Nintendo, since they have such a huge library of IPs at their belt, and they proudly displayed in their own signature fighting game, Super Smash Bros. And the only company I can think of that could rival Smash Bros. Would be PlayStation. Especially when you consider that so many beloved games, characters, and series made their debut on the PlayStation consoles. So when PlayStation AllStars was announced, I was excited to see what Sony had to bring to the table. I mean, they have Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Oh wait, they're not in the game? Still, they have Cloud, Strife, and Solid Snake and Klonoa. Wait, they're not in the game too? Then, who do we have? Oh. Oh no. Yes, most people already know that the roster is definitely, how can I put this lightly, utter crap. I mean, at least we have some PlayStation icons like Ratchet and Clank, Sir Daniel Parappa, and Sackboy. But we also have the dude from Infamous, and his evil twin. Seriously, why did they not include such iconic characters that are synonymous with PlayStation, but instead decided to opt out for Big Daddy and Toro? At least they have Dante. Oh wait, never mind. It's the poo-poo DMC Dante. They couldn't even get the good Dante. How is this even possible? Alas, it's no surprise why this game didn't do so well and why there isn't a sequel. It's just wasted potential. No Man's Sky. Let me explain. So yes, I know that No Man's Sky is a hell of a lot of a better game nowadays, and it's actually worth checking out now. But I'm going to be talking about the original 2016 PlayStation 4 No Man's Sky before all the updates. Originally, Hello Games promised that in the game that you could play with others online, and that the game would feature billions and billions of unique planets in what was essentially an endless universe. With all this in mind, this should have been one of, if not the best game ever made. But in the end, the game just became repetitive with the same land here, grab some stuff, leave, land here, grab some stuff, you get the rest. I would be a liar if I didn't say that I was impressed when I first played this game, you know, flying to different planets and such. But what else do you do in this game? Yeah, nothing. This game is boring, and you literally do the same thing over and over and over and over and over. It got very boring after a while. Thank God this game actually improved, and now I can actually recommend the game. But 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. Back in the 2000s, you couldn't go wrong with a Tony Hawk game. I absolutely loved the original 4 Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, and the soundtrack and the attitude these games had, it just screams childhood. Hell, I'm not even into skateboarding, and I still love these games, so when they announced Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, I was hyped! This was a new Tony Hawk game that didn't require a stupid gimmick. But man, did this game end up falling flat on its face. Like, this game is absolutely disgraceful to the legacy of the Pro Skater series. Yeah, it had all the things that you probably remember from the games, like the gas characters and the big head mode. But even though those things are still there, there's a lot that has been taken away from the games, just custom skaters, and even some of the signature moves, all gone. And the level design, oh god, it was just plain and generic. And might I add, this was the 5th main game in the series. But even if the game was somewhat creative with its gameplay, it would not have been enough to save the game. The game was broken and glitchy, and it was always online. And I later on found out the only reason why this game even exists is because Activision's contract with Tony Hawk was about to expire in 2015, and they just wanted to milk out a game before the contract even ended. This game was not a product of love at all. Hell, even poor Tony on the box looks sad. Look at him! And even if you wanted to play this game, you can't! The game servers only lasted until 2017, meaning that this game won't even work anymore. Yep, you heard me. You can't even play this game even if you own a physical disc. You might as well use it as a doorstop. That's it. I don't want to talk about this game anymore. Let's just move on to the next game. This game was the most recent one to disappoint me. I can imagine that most of you right now are asking me, Chavapa, what the hell is this game? And to that, I'll explain. The Falconer was not only a launch title for Microsoft's 4th console, the Xbox Series X and S. This was also one of 2 exclusives, the other one being Bright Memory, which I almost included on this list. So, what exactly is the plot of the Falconer? So there's a giant falcon, and it flies, and you shoot shit. Seriously, that's all I got from this game. It does have a story, although it's way too confusing to understand. Hell, not only is the story too confusing, but the gameplay is confusing. And I was playing it on easy mode! No joke, I died in the tutorials multiple times because the game didn't even tell me what I was supposed to do, so I was forced to watch the same stupid cutscene over and over again. Fun. Look, I know this game was made by Juan Thomas Sala, but Thomas, if you're watching this video, please, I beg of you, please make your game actually easier to understand. This game was definitely a disappointing launch title, let alone exclusive for a next-gen console. If I have to say one positive thing about it, at least the game runs well on Xbox Series consoles. It's a shame, though, that this was the game to begin it. Welp, I'm going to hell. But listen, Super Mario 3D World is not a bad game, far from it. Personally, the soundtrack is one of the best music Nintendo has ever put out, and I can listen to it all day. And the game visually looks nice. It's just that, well, the gameplay... it's just not my favorite Mario game, okay? Like, as a Mario game, it's fine. There's nothing offensive about it. It's just that I'm judging it as a 3D Mario game. So I'm comparing it to Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and the Galaxy games. And especially since the games that came before it, being Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, those games challenge and redefined what a 3D Mario game can be, while at the same time being fun and enjoyable, and just an absolutely phenomenal adventure. And then when I look at 3D World, which, let's be real, is just a souped up version of Mario 3D Land, feels like a huge step backwards compared to the Galaxy games. Not only with the level design being just bland and unimaginative for the most part, but also the fact that the main power-up in the game, the cat suit, is basically required to traverse the majority of the stages. It just feels lazy to me. And let's not forget about the bosses. Oh my god, the bosses! Yes, they're not the worst, but I absolutely hate it when they repeat the same bosses over and over and over. Like, it's the same Snake, Boom Boom, and Goo Boy again and again. Like, come on, all I'm asking is for consistency here. Again, 3D World is not a bad game. It just didn't impress me. But hey, on a more positive note, the Switch version will add a new open world mode titled Bowser's Fury, and just by looking at that, I might want to give the game a second chance. Although my next game on the list won't be so lucky, unfortunately. To say that Kojima had a rocky fallout with Konami would be an understatement. But again, I, along many others, were excited for Kojima's first ever project outside of Konami, since he could finally create the game that he wanted to make. And that game ended up being Death Stranding, a bizarre philosophical post-apocalyptic game set in the dark, twisted, dangerous world. The game was mysterious, like something we have never seen before. Our imaginations were going wild over what we thought this game was going to be like, and eventually the game came. So, exactly, in the end, what do you do in Death Stranding? You walk all over a wasteland and deliver packages, and occasionally cradle your baby in a bag. I'm not being sarcastic, that's literally the game. You're literally Postman Pat, but in a broken world. I mean, there are things I like about the game, like the visuals, but man, the story is just all over the place. And I get that Kojima's games can be a bit odd at times, but this just feels like the game doesn't know what it wants to be. Is it a survival horror? Not really. This game isn't scary, and when it tries to be, it fails at being that. Thing is, I like Kojima, and I'm happy that he made the game that he wanted to make, but all I can do is pray for him and hope that his next game will be a bit more grounded and accessible. Also, side note, I hate that baby. Ugh. Yoshi's Island has to be one of my favorite Super Nintendo games ever made. I mean, not only is it a cute game with that art style and the cheery music, it also definitely took full advantage of the Super Nintendo and the Mode 7, which delivered a game that only, well, Nintendo can offer. So when Yoshi's New Island was announced for the Nintendo 3DS, I was excited since, well, the game looked good, and hopefully it might be a good sequel to the SNES Classic. I didn't necessarily pick up the game at launch, but my first experience with this game was when Nintendo gifted me a download code for the game sometime in 2016, and genuinely, I was excited to receive a game for free. And then once the game downloaded on my 3DS, I realized why they gave it out for free. To say that the soundtrack of the game is bad would be a huge understatement. Like, the music, oh my god, it's demonically bad. Like, let's just listen to a few tracks. Wait a moment. I think I found a good one. Hey. This one isn't half. I mean, I get why they used kazoos. I mean, I believe they wanted to feel like the Yoshi themselves were playing the music. But be honest, when you see Yoshi, does he look musical at all? And even if we ignore the soundtrack, the problems don't even end there. The whole game itself just comes off as stale and boring for the most part. Like, the levels are pretty standard as they aren't difficult, and they are basically linear as all hell. The Yoshi transformations return, except they all force in the 3DS gyroscope in annoying ways. The new thing the game added was egg dozers. What are egg dozers, you ask? Well, when Yoshi eats a giant enemy, he basically tears up his own asshole. I can't even make this shit up. And he lays a giant egg and throws it across the screen. When I was finishing the game, I was hoping that the final boss would at least redeem the whole game for me. And it did, until... Suddenly, warping through space and time, King Bowser appears. Nope, I'm done! This game fucking sucks! I'm sorry, I just need to get a drink. I'm done, no more Yoshi's New Island. It's just, oh god, no! Alright, so we're at the final 3 games. I already know some of you want to kill me after I spoke about Super Mario 3D World, but trust me, these last 3 games were the ones that ultimately broke me. The ones that disappointed me the most. The games that had me sulking in bed. And the worst thing is that these 3 games are actually really good games that are beloved by millions. So if you're brave enough to join me for these last 3, be warned, because by the end of this you'll probably want to kill me. But here we go. Yep! I warned you! I told you this was gonna get spicy! Look, before I get people mad, let me get things straight. I don't hate Splatoon. In fact, I wanted to love this game and its sequel to death. They ultimately left me feeling hollow and disappointed. Let me explain. So in case you don't know, Splatoon is an online shooter game in which you compete in teams to cover one's turf with ink, and the one who spreads the most ink of a specific color wins. Personally, I like the concept of the gameplay here, but it's the execution where things get sour for me. Remember, I said Splatoon was an online game, and by online, the main turf wars that the game is centered upon are online only. You cannot play this mode casually, and again, I don't have a problem with that if the servers worked. Look, in online games, sometimes people don't have the best internet connection, and it's not their fault. But the thing is that, because of the fact that the game is online, if a player were to leave a match, the match is over, and you're literally pulled out of the game! Oh, and in Splatoon 2, they get more vicious, because if someone gets disconnected, you get punished for it! Yep, you heard me. You can get banned for having a shitty internet connection. How is that even remotely fair? And the thing is, I forgot to mention, you have to play in these online turf wars in order to level up and progress. So basically, if you don't play online, you're pretty much locked out of all the different varieties of weapons and gear that the game offers, since you need to be at a certain level to obtain it. Sure, let's just say that you have a good internet connection, but the matchmaking system to these turf wars are insanely unfair, as you can be level 3 and be forced to go up against people that are level 87 or higher. Basically, you get your ass kicked because you were too weak because of how the game banned you for having a poor connection. Look, I know that there's a single player campaign in both games, but I want to get something off my chest. They aren't fun. Like, yeah, the first couple of levels are fine and all, but once you reach a certain point, the level design just gets frustratingly difficult and unfair that the game no longer becomes fun to play. I get that there's a secret lore to the game, and I'll admit that it's well written, but it isn't worth the pain I had to go through playing this game. I might sound angry with the game, but mostly, I'm just sad. I wanted so hard to love this series. I love the character designs they put into the game. The world is absolutely beautiful and the soundtrack gets to die for. But unfortunately, this game didn't quite cut it out for me. And to me, whenever I see something Splatoon related, it just pains me that I didn't have a good experience with the game. I'm so sorry if I couldn't enjoy the game. I really am. I've been a Pokemon fan for all my life. I've always been in love with the gameplay, the story, and the idea of catching them all. I can still remember the exact moment Pokemon X and Y were first announced, and my god, I have never been so hyped for a game like this one. I mean, not only was this the first mainline Pokemon game to use full-on 3D graphics, but it was also the first one for the Nintendo 3DS, so there was plenty to be excited about, especially since the last game in the franchise, which was Pokemon Black and White 2, delivered a phenomenal experience, and so the expectations were high. Maybe a little too high. I mean, Gen 5 introduced over 150 new and unique Pokemon, so imagine what the next gen could bring over, 60 Pokemon? Wait, what? You gotta be kidding me, right? At least there's a good amount of legends. Wait! Only 3 legendaries?! Okay, yes, the 5th generation did spoil us with a lot of Pokemon, but the lack of the new Pokemon was just the tip of the iceberg. Not only were there a lack of new Pokemon, most of them being of questionable design, the region of Kalos has to be one of my least favorite regions ever in a Pokemon game. How do you make France boring? Oh, and remember when I was talking about a lack of Pokemon? They pretty much did that so they can hammer down Gen 1. And Charizard. You cannot forget about Charizard. He gets 2 forms! I still remember when I finished the game for the first time and feeling empty and kinda ripped off, like I was legit heartbroken. All I wanted was a fantastic Pokemon game, and this game felt rushed out the door. And honestly, this game is the beginning of what I would like to call the dark era of Pokemon, where the game's quality kinda varies from being good to bad. And it's absolutely depressing to think that it all started here. Honestly, Pokemon is no longer perfect. But no matter how crappy it gets, I'll still be a fan. But seriously, Charizard is pretty much Ishihara's bitch. Let's just admit it now. Well, I definitely sealed my fate with those last 2. But my ultimate number one most disappointing game is a game that, oh god, it just makes me sad. It was supposed to be a celebration of the franchise, like its magnum opus. God, I feel horrible for what I'm about to say about it, but alas, I must confront my inner demons. Ladies and gentlemen, my number one most disappointing game of all time, the game that broke me, the game that absolutely left me devastated was Kirby Star Allies. Yep, this is my number one. This game is the sole reason why this video even exists. First off, let me get things straight. Kirby Star Allies is not a bad game at all. In some ways, I have a soft spot for this game, well, because it's Kirby. And that reason alone is also why my expectations for this game were high. You see, I'm a huge Kirby fan, and I've been playing the games for a long time now. The first Kirby game I ever fell in love with was Kirby and the Amazing Mirror for the Game Boy Advance, and I would later on play every game in the series, and with each Kirby game, Kirby just got better and better. But the games peaked with Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Wii. For a console game, it was awesome with all the fun gameplay and the fact that not only was the game simple, it was chock full of love and excitement that Kirby can deliver. While I haven't played any of the 3DS Kirby games, I've heard that those games are really good. So I would love to check those out one of these days. But enough of me talking about my history of the pink puffball. I'm here to talk about Star Allies. So when Kirby Star Allies was first announced back at E3 2017, I was pumped since I've been waiting almost a decade for a mainline Kirby game in HD. This was going to be his HD debut, so there was plenty to be excited about. The graphics were beautiful and the soundtrack was so bubbly, and you could combine copy abilities like Kirby 64. Sign me up! This is going to be the best Kirby game ever! God, I wish I was right. I remember getting the game at Best Buy at launch, and I was so excited. As soon as I got home, I popped the game into my Switch, and that's where things went downhill. The game was short, and it wasn't challenging at all. And you're probably telling me right now, Chavapa, it's a Kirby game. What do you expect? And to that, let me explain something. In past Kirby games, there were multiple outcomes. And if you wanted to get the best possible outcome, you had to take your time and explore each well-crafted stage to find secrets that you will need to progress in the game. Like for example, in Kirby 64, there are crystal shards scattered in the levels, and they are often hidden. And in Kirby Dreamland 3, you have to complete a level in a certain manner in order to make the people of Dreamland happy. Things like this made replay value in Kirby games fundamental, since you would need to have a good eye in order to get the best possible outcome. However, in Kirby Star Allies, the level design is literally go from the start to the exit. Nothing more than just that. I mean, Kirby's adventure was the same, but every level in that game was memorable in its own ways. And it was different from one another, and it had hidden secrets to boot. And that was an NES game! Okay, let me calm down. So the main gimmick in Star Allies is that you can partner up with your enemies and make them, well, your allies. It's definitely a cute and fun feature, and something that was carried over from Superstar, which is a nice little reference, and your allies can also power up your copy abilities and make them unique. Sadly, this only works with a few copy abilities, unlike in Kirby 64, where all copy abilities can be combined. One thing I like about the game are the callbacks to the older Kirby games. I know it was done in good intent, but man, it just makes me want to play those games instead since they were more contact-packed. And speaking of contact, guess how long it took me to beat this game? Don't be shy, take a wild guess. 3 hours! It took me 3 hours! Most Kirby games are at least 8 to 12 hours long, so you definitely get your money's worth. But this game was way too short for a mainline Kirby game. That's my biggest complaint I have about this game. It's way too short and easy. The game basically plays itself. And I remember beating this game literally 5 hours after I bought it. Yep, I did everything the game offered me. I mean, short games aren't bad. I recently played a game called Donut County, which was about 2 hours long, but I spent $5 on that game. Guess how much I paid for Kirby Star Allies? $60! Yep, and that's not including our tax. $60 for a game with barely any content is unacceptable. And the sad thing is that this game is still $60 at this very moment while I'm writing this video. Look, call me nitpicky and a sourpuss all you want, but again, let me compare it to Kirby's Return to Dreamland. That game was made chock full of love and it was just bursting with content, and you could play the game for hours and hours. I legit beat Star Allies not 1, but 4 times. I've 100%ed the game 4 times, and I also managed to complete the Soul Melter difficulty in under 15 minutes. When you think of Kirby games, most people definitely think of the bosses. I mean, Kirby bosses have to be some of the most memorable bosses ever to be in video games. And Star Allies has a few that are alright. I mean, you got your standard Wispy Woods, King Dedede, and Krakow. But we also got the return of Pawn and Con, which had me ecstatic. I couldn't wait to see what bosses they had the more we got deeper in the game. Surely we wouldn't have a deja vu kind of experience with them. Yes, they're not the worst, but I absolutely hate it when they repeat the same bosses over and over and over. Speak of the devil, they did it again! I'm never gonna catch a break from this trend. Look, this game has the audacity to repeat the same bosses over and over again, but apparently insultingly not only recolor them, but give them different names. That's not Wispy Woods, that's Iggy Woods, you dumbass! Seriously, at this point, I might as well join in. Hey guys, I'm not Chavapa, I'm a completely different guy, Blavapa! See, it's lazy. Like, why couldn't they just bring back some of the other bosses from past Kirby games? Honestly, that would have been a better idea than blatantly insulting the intelligence of the player. But enough of that, let's get straight to the desserts, and by that I mean DLC. Dessert loving Chavapa. I mean, we got some guest characters which are a nice touch, and some new modes, but what else do we also got here? This game is a sad excuse of a Kirby game, especially one that came out so late in the series. One thing I found out while I was working on this video, and something that made me feel kind of sad, was that Kirby Star Allies was supposed to be like a big celebration of the entire franchise, and was supposed to be like a grand finale to the mainline Kirby platformers, and the people who worked on this game wanted it to be a proper send-off to Kirby, which would explain the guest characters and constant updates. But if anything, this makes me feel horrible since I didn't enjoy the game. Like, I feel like this game was supposed to be a product of love, but maybe in this case, am I the problem? In the end, do I hate Kirby Star Allies? No, I don't, and to tell the honest truth, I have a soft spot for it. It's just that the game didn't live up to my standards, and all I wished was that the game felt more complete. But all this had me thinking, if this really is the end of the mainline Kirby games, or at least this phase of Kirby, then I wish the best of luck for my favorite pink puffball on his next journey. I don't think this is goodbye for Kirby, but possibly a new beginning for him. And as a Kirby fan, I'll definitely be there to join him. Godspeed, Kirby. Godspeed. Well, I definitely angered a lot of people with that last one, but before I close things off, I would like to discuss something. The main reason why all these games disappointed me was not entirely because of the quality, but because of expectation. Sometimes we just want everything in life, but end up getting disappointed when that doesn't happen. It's like a quote from my childhood, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And that saying goes for everything. And before I wrap things up, I just want to end the video on a positive note. Just because you're disappointed by something, use it as a motivation to better yourself, and to get back up and do better. And in the cases of these games, most of them were followed up by phenomenal ones. So in the end, it's not all doom and gloom, because there's always a light at the end of every tunnel. It's our first ever fan mail segment, so let's start off the right way. So on Twitter, I asked you all, what were your most disappointing games, since that was the theme of the video. So let's start off with our first comment, which comes to us from Austin Dern. Austin writes, the Mac port of SimCity 3000 was just a crashy, sluggish, when not frozen emulator running on Windows SimCity. Well, Austin, I haven't played a SimCity game before, but I definitely know what it's like to play an inferior port of a game that you wanted to play. I personally experienced that with several games, especially when I played the Nintendo DS versions of games like Toy Story 3, which were nothing like the console counterparts. Our next comment comes from my close friend, Pati Jantung. So Pati writes, "Never played any, but seen a lot. If I have to decide, it's Dead Island." While I have never played Dead Island, I do know that the game has disappointed a lot of people, since it didn't quite play as it was advertised to, which is something that happens a lot. I might look into Dead Island if I ever get the chance to. We also have another comment from Craftoni. Craftoni writes, "My disappointing game is Agony. I completely forgot this game existed. While I can't really show any gameplay of Agony, that game was incredibly disappointing, and it probably was so disappointing that I forgot it even existed." Last but not least, we have a pretty lengthy comment from Gibson. Disappointing games. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, Saints Row the 3rd, Need for Speed 2015, Dead Rising 4, and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Wish I could add more, but these were all that came to mind. Funny thing is that if you watched my video, I had a whole segment dedicated to Pro Skater 5, and now that you mentioned Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I kinda wish I included it as an honorable mention, but it's too late for that now.